Sometime in the last few weeks, your robin vanished. The one that used to sit on the fence every morning, singing before you had even had your first coffee, is gone. The feeder is still full. The lawn is empty. The garden feels oddly quiet, and you might not have been able to put your finger on why, until just now. Here is the reassuring part, right at the start. Your robin almost certainly has not died, and it has not packed up and left you for someone else's garden. It is still here, and it is doing something right now, in the middle of summer, that it quietly needs you not to notice. By the end of this, you will know exactly what that is. You will know where your robin is sitting at this very moment, and you will know, almost to the week, when it is going to come back. You will also find out why the song it comes back with will not be quite the song that disappeared. So, let's take a proper look. Let's start with the disappearance itself, because the first thing worth understanding is that it is real, and it is deliberate. You are not imagining it. Right across Britain and Northern Ireland, at about this point in the summer, robins go quiet, and they seem to slip away. The bird that was the loudest, boldest, most in-your-face presence in the garden, for months simply switches off. No song, no fence post, no little shadow following you round the flower bed while you weed. For most people it happens so gradually that they only notice the silence a week or two after it has already begun. And almost everything your robin is doing at this time of year comes down to a single word: moult. Every feather on a bird's body is a dead structure. Once it has grown, it cannot heal and it cannot repair itself. It just wears out, slowly frayed by sunlight and rain, and by being dragged in and out of nest holes and thorny hedges all through the breeding season. By midsummer, an adult robin is wearing a coat that is battered, faded, and close to worn out. So once a year, every bird has to grow a completely new set from scratch. That yearly replacement is the moult, and the robin is one of the very first garden birds in Britain to get on with it. That head start is a big part of why yours is disappearing, while plenty of other birds are still carrying on as normal. The timing is not an accident. The moult begins almost the moment the last of this year's chicks have finally left the nest. Months of frantic parental work come to a stop, and the worn-out adult immediately starts the long, expensive job of growing a fresh coat before the cold sets in. From the first dropped feather to the last new one locking into place takes roughly 6 to 8 weeks. The males tend to start a little before the females, which is why one robin in a pair can seem to disappear before its partner does. Here is the part that makes it so costly. Feathers are not cheap to grow. They are built largely from protein, and growing a whole new set at once is one of the most demanding things a small bird's body does all year. The robin has to find extra food and pour that energy straight into its skin, all while the summer heat and the daily business of staying alive carry on around it. It is an enormous ask, packed into a few short weeks. If you do happen to catch a proper look at your robin during all this, it can be a slightly startling sight. A moulting adult often looks scruffy and moth-eaten, with gaps in its tail and short, spiky new feathers pushing up through the old ones. A few garden birds take it even further. Blackbirds and some of the tits can replace all their head feathers in one go and end up briefly, comically, bald before the new set grows in. Robins rarely go quite that far, but a raggedy, half-finished looking robin in July is a normal, healthy robin. There is one more odd sight worth watching for around now. If you spot a speckled, golden brown little bird, robin-shaped, but with no red on it at all. That is this year's young. Baby robins do not hatch with the red breast. They earn it in their own moult in late summer, trading their spotty juvenile feathers for the orange-red badge of an adult. So the very same few weeks that hide the parents away are quietly turning this year's youngsters into the robins you will know all winter. Now here is where it gets genuinely dramatic, because growing all those feathers at once drops the robin into the most dangerous stretch of its whole year. Think about what a feather actually does. It is insulation against the cold. It is a waterproof layer against the rain. Above all, it is the thing that lets a bird fly. A robin does not shed every feather at once, thankfully, or it would be stranded on the ground. It drops them in a careful order, a few at a time, growing each new one in before the next one goes. Even so, there is a stretch of several weeks where the wings and tail are part old, part new, and part still growing. The fresh feathers are short and soft and not yet at full length. A bird in that state cannot fly quite as fast, or turn quite as sharply, or climb away quite as cleanly as it can for the rest of the year. For a small bird whose entire survival plan is being too quick to catch, a few weeks of clumsy flying is a frightening place to be. A moulting robin is a slower robin, and on some level it seems to know it. So it does the sensible thing. It hides. This is where your robin has actually gone. It has not left the area. It has dropped down out of sight into the thickest, densest cover it can find, the middle of a hedge, the tangle at the back of an overgrown shrub, that patch of bramble you keep meaning to cut back. Somewhere a cat cannot stalk it, and a sparrowhawk cannot get a clean run at it. For a few weeks, it becomes one of the shyest birds in the whole garden, which is a strange thing to say about the cheeky little character that usually owns the place. So the robin has slipped into hiding. That brings us to the silence, which is maybe the strangest part of the whole thing, because the very first thing it gives up when the moult starts is its song. Stop and think about what a song is from a predator's point of view. A singing bird is a bird sitting somewhere obvious, making a loud, repeated, easy-to-trace sound over and over, telling the whole neighborhood exactly where it is. For most of the year, that is a risk worth taking, because song is how a robin holds its territory and wins a mate. The reward pays for the danger. During the moult, that sum changes completely. The robin is already slower and more exposed than at any other time of the year. The last thing it can afford is to perch on a fence post and shout, "Here I am," to every cat and hawk within earshot. So it stops singing. It goes quiet on purpose, to keep from being found at the one moment it can least afford to be caught. That sudden summer silence in your garden is a survival tactic, and a very old one. The robin is making itself invisible on purpose, and it works. You could share your garden with a moulting robin for a fortnight and never once set eyes on it. And that is exactly the point. And if this is starting to change how you hear your own garden, drop a comment below and tell me when your robin went quiet this year. I read them all, and the patterns people share from one garden to the next always surprise me. So the robin is hidden, and it is silent, which leads to the question people ask me about most, the untouched feeder. This is the part that worries people the most. You are still putting food out, faithfully. The mealworms, the sunflower hearts, the fat, and it just sits there, day after day, for a bird you have fed all year. That is easy to read as rejection, or worse, as a sign that something has happened to it. There are two good reasons your robin is ignoring the feeder right now, and both of them are ordinary. The first is that same pull to stay hidden. A feeder, by its very design, sits out in the open, somewhere you can watch it, which means somewhere the robin can be watched at it too. Stepping out onto that exposed perch in its half-molted, slower state is a gamble it would simply rather not take for a few weeks. It would far rather feed quietly, deep in the leaves, where nothing can rush it. The second reason is that, honestly, it does not need you as much in July as it does in January. This is high summer. The hedges and borders are heavy with natural food. Insects, caterpillars, spiders, aphids, and the first berries and seeds of the season. For a few short weeks, the garden is a well-stocked larder, and all of it sits exactly where the robin already is, down low in the green, under cover. Your feeder is competing with a whole landscape that is briefly overflowing, so a robin that stops visiting the feeder in the middle of summer, sometimes for 4 to 8 weeks, is usually a perfectly healthy bird that has simply found a safer, closer, easier way to feed itself while it gets through the hardest job of its year. Which brings me to the part I most want you to hold on to. Your robin is still there, right now, almost certainly within a few meters of where it has always been. Robins are far more attached to a patch of ground than most people realize. Through all of this, the moult, the hiding, the silence, the adult robin generally stays put, inside the very same territory it has held all year. It does not slip off to some distant wood and drift back later. It sinks down into the densest corner of its own patch and waits the whole thing out. In many pairs, the female eventually moves a short distance to set up her own separate territory for the winter, often only a garden or two away. But the ground your robin is hiding in this week is almost certainly ground you can see from your own window. And it really is worth saying how faithful these birds are to one small patch. A robin that comes through the winter will often hold more or less the same territory, year after year, which means the bird hiding in your hedge this summer is very likely the same individual that sang to you last winter, and quite possibly the winter before that. Robins do not live long lives on average, sadly, but the one that does keep going can become a proper fixture. The same little presence returning to the same few square meters of your garden for years on end. So the robin you think you have lost is, in all likelihood, sitting in your hedge as you watch this. Same bird, same garden, just briefly and very deliberately out of view. Before we get to the best part, the comeback, I want to mention one thing quickly. These small, hidden turning points in a garden bird's year, the moult, the silence, the empty feeder, are the kind of thing almost nobody ever explains. And once you can see them, you never watch your garden the same way again. So I have put together a free guide to the garden birds of Britain and Northern Ireland, what they are doing month by month, and how to read it. It is called Reading Your Garden Birds. It runs to 16 illustrated pages, and it is completely free. The link is in the description and pinned at the top of the comments at guide.ukgardenbirds.com. It is the perfect companion to these little films. Right. The comeback. The silence does not last, and when it breaks in one of the loveliest little moments in the whole bird calendar, if you know to listen for it. As the moult finishes and the new feathers harden into a full, fresh, perfect coat, everything about the robin situation changes. It is fast again, sharp again, safe again, and it has a brand new job to do before winter. Most garden birds spend the cold months quietly putting up with their neighbors. The robin does the opposite. It holds a winter territory, its own private patch of ground, and it will defend that ground on its own, right through to spring. And to claim a patch, it has to announce itself. So it climbs back up out of the hedge, back onto the fence post, back into the open, and it starts to sing again. For most gardens, this happens from late August into September. One morning, the garden simply has its robin back, on the same fence, in the same spot, as though it had never been away. There is one more thing worth knowing here, and it is a lovely one. Both the male and the female sing in autumn. Through spring and summer, it is mostly the male you hear. But once winter territories are being staked out, the female claims and defends her own ground too, and she sings to hold it. So the robin serenading you on a frosty morning might well be the female, which is something very few garden birds can offer you. And here is the detail almost nobody notices. The one I promised you at the start. The song that comes back is not the same song that disappeared. The spring song, the one the male sings to win a mate, is rich and full and forward and urgent. The song that returns after the moult, the autumn song, carries a different color. It is thinner, softer, more wistful, almost melancholy, drifting out across the garden rather than declaring across it. And there is a plain reason for the shift. The spring song is about attraction, about pairing up and raising a brood. The autumn song has a quieter job, holding a scrap of territory and carrying one bird through the winter alone. Different purpose, different mood, different sound, and all of it from the same little throat. It is also one of the reasons the robin is one of the very few birds you will hear singing in Britain right through the dead of winter, on cold, still December mornings, when almost everything else has fallen quiet. That thin, sweet, slightly sad song, drifting over a frosty garden, is your robin, up on its winter patch, telling the world it is still here. So the next time your robin goes quiet in the middle of summer, and now you know that most years it will, right about this time, you will understand what you are really watching. It is a small brown bird that has dropped into the deep green of your garden to swap every feather it owns for a new set, in silence and out of sight, at the most vulnerable moment of its year, and that will climb back onto your fence in a few short weeks and begin, very quietly, to sing again. Your robin did not abandon you this summer. It trusted your garden enough to be at its most defenseless, right here, a few feet from your window. And if you would like to see just how far your robin will go to defend that winter patch, brace yourself, because this gentle-looking little bird turns out to be one of the most ruthless in the whole garden. I made a full film about it, and you can watch it right here. Take good care of your gardens, and I will see you in the next one.